Hello, happy Tuesday. Welcome back to another episode of The Practice. This show is an unrehearsed look into my workflow. I'm Stuart. I'm a 3D illustrator, designer, animator, and your pal, and I'm excited to have you back for another episode this week. Big episode 150. Pretty exciting. It's a nice round number. Further than I thought I'd get, to be honest. When I started this sort of on a lark about 3 years ago, I didn't really anticipate ever getting this far. So, feeling pretty good about that. The show has evolved and changed a bit over the years. We've definitely upped the production values. I've improved my skills quite a bit. I've gotten to know a bunch of you. We're almost at 10,000 YouTube followers, which is pretty wild. That's definitely a lot more than I ever thought I'd get to be honest. So feeling pretty good about that. Nice round number. Now it looks like there's a little bit of an issue with the typical chat client that I use. So let me know if you're out there. Let me know if the chat is working. Say hello. Got to swap back and forth between the browser and Cinema. I don't have that great overlay like I typically have, so might take me a second longer to, acknowledge your comment, to say what's up, but that's all right. So I have a pretty good idea of what I want to make today, which is not always the case. It is exciting nonetheless. So since I know, I'm gonna just add a camera right out of the gate, kind of zero it out. Cool, cool, cool. Seeing 0 viewers at this point. Let me know if you're out there. Say hello. Also notice that, some time back, someone left what's called a super comment in the chat, which is basically like a little tip, which is super, super appreciated. Thank you very much. But I don't always notice that in the chat client here. I don't think YouTube pushes those out to this Restreamio chat client. So thank you. Feel free to leave a tip. I'll use it for coffee or a cold beer. Much appreciated. Today I'm going to be working on landscape with some typography in it, which is one of my favorite things to work on, actually. For now, I'm just kind of setting up this ground plane. I think I'm also going to kind of make this a forested scene. I'm going to use, pretty simple, kind of low poly. I mean, maybe not strictly low poly. Let's say a simple setup. Lots of primitives. Love a good primitive. Let's see. What I think I'll do is I'll start this out with a cloner just to scatter a few around. But I think I'll probably, my light just clicked on there. Well, it shows that I'm connected. I wonder if I missed the first little bit here. That'd be a bummer. Oh well. Hello everyone out there. Let's see. All right. Hello everybody. Definitely want to get a lot of depth going on in this scene. That is going to be really part of the focus of what we're working on here today. Hey, Siddharth. Glad to see the chat is working. Thanks for tuning in. People are starting to pile into the viewing number here. I guess I sort of missed that early part of the stream. That's too bad. Technical issues are always fun. But good to see you. Thanks for joining. Where's everyone tuning in from today? Like I mentioned early on, I think people might have missed this, but today I'm going to be working on a very simple, but hopefully with plenty of depth scene that incorporates lots of trees and landscape elements as well as some typography. So we're working on really just setting up the basics, fleshing out the early forms, getting it good. I don't know if I'd call this strictly a low poly scene, but we're going to be using very simple elements. Let's see here. I'll thin that out a little bit. I'm going to do UVs also. Probably not. UVs are sort of complicated. Cinema doesn't excel at UVs, or at least I don't know how to use them super well. Let's put it that way. Also going to try and add a bit of randomness to these trees, just a little bit. I'm going to put a displacer on those and add some noise. I'm going to turn the scale down. You know, trees, they're not perfect cylinders. I want to rough them up a little bit. But not that much, I don't believe. So let's turn the height and intensity down a little bit. It's got a little bit of roughness. Cool, cool, cool. Yeah, usually plain colors. That's typically how I like to work anyway. A little bit simpler, a little bit nicer. You can get a lot done. You can still get a pretty sophisticated look using just those. So let's go for that. Let's go for that. All right. Let's try this. Let's get that text in there. It's all right. And the idea is we're going to have sort of a soft depth of field with some nice atmospheric perspective. Yeah, Siddharth, I'm not, you know, I think it's a mix of things. One is I'm not super experienced with it. I'm not super great at it. But I also think that there are tools that make it a little easier to do that UV unwrapping. Let's see. It's not bad. I dig that. Let's make it look good. Always a fan of the fillet caps. Very good. Now the thinking here is, you know, I'm going to make a copy of this just so I can keep one intact. I always like to have this backup folder. Just keep backup things inside of a null that's turned off. And that way when I, oops. Get rid of some of those extra folders. Now I've got these guys that I can push and pull. And I want to distribute these throughout the scene, different sizes and angles. Also think I'm going to trees. Eventually I'm going to expand this cloner of trees just so I can have a little bit more control over where they go exactly. And we're just starting out. Not sure exactly where I'm going to place all these, but I have a pretty good idea of the type of image I want to make. So just sort of blocking things out for the time being. What I'm going to do is I think I want all these letters to feel like they're the same size, roughly. But since they're forward and backwards in space, they're actually going to be different sizes. Just visually, they're going to appear to be the same size here. Definitely want to obscure and hide them. So just kind of setting that up for the time being. I think I'm going to go ahead and expand these and get rid of this random once I do. The other great thing is that this is going to allow me to change the properties of each of these displacers a little bit. Change the seed, for example, if they're feeling a little bit too uniform. And that way I can control, since I'm doing typography here, I don't want a totally random look. I want to be able to control this a little bit. Sort of tuck things behind the trees or in front of them. Oops. And we're going to try and keep things organized here to a certain extent. Also got some ideas for a lighting technique that I'm going to use, which I hope works out. It's kind of a new technique I didn't know you could do until just recently. So it's kind of fun. It is really useful to have, sort of direct control over these cloned cylinders. I am going to want to pull some of them to the foreground a bit. It gives a bit of contrast and scale. Important. That's a start. I'll probably use either the standard or the physical renderer, which is what I typically do. I'm not getting as much displacement here as I would like. And while the random effector is a really great way to get a lot of these guys sort of set up quickly in the scene, you can see they're kind of piled up in a way that I don't love. They definitely need to be adjusted. Definitely want to be able to pull some into the foreground here. Really fill out these gaps. Plenty of skinny guys, but I think we'll want some nice thick trees as well. I'm not really getting the displacement that I want. Actually, it's going to be a pain to select all those, so I'm just going to say displacer. The old handy-dandy search feature. Let's turn that up a bit. Let's see what we get. A little better, a little better. Now it's pretty early in the scene to be doing this, or in the process, I should say. Snoop is back. Swoop Neb, what's up? Thanks for tuning in. We'll be playing with this physical sky because I'm a big old fan. Let's kind of make this a twilight scene. So we'll just go into time and location and kind of turn that up. See what we get. Love the shadowy effects that we get just right away. Pretty good. You could also, if you want to sort of have a bit more control over the shadows, you could go to broad shading. You could turn your shadows on. That way, because I know that I want to grab one of these guys and get a shadow to fall across the O here, So I can just sort of control that shadow. So we get there. The thing I definitely want to do here, that might be too thick. I'm gonna hit undo, redo, just so I know I have that guy selected. But turn the thickness way down. See what we get. Definitely want to turn on atmosphere here. I'm going to use fog as well eventually, but that's really going to add a lot to my render time, so I'm not going to use that just yet. This atmosphere is an awesome cheat code just for getting some of that atmospheric depth, atmospheric perspective rather. In the last episode of the practice, I talked about sort of what atmospheric perspective is in terms of the visible light spectrum. Turn that up a bit. Turn that dithering up too. That should add noise as we move back, which is a cool thing. There's a lot of interest to the color here. Big fan. Big old fan. I was going to turn the rendering settings up, but I'm going to hold for a minute until we're a little further along in the scene. Oops. What I'm going to do before I do that again is throw a protection tag on here. I basically lock the camera in position because I always wind up moving it around a bit. Grab this dude, make him a little thinner. We want to get kind of a lost and found effect with these letters. You know, part of the inspiration here comes from that famous Rene Magritte painting of the horse appearing and disappearing in a very surrealistic way between some trees in the forest. I want to play with some depth here and have a lot of interplay between the front of the scene and the back of the scene. Get some of that depth of field going. That's something we're definitely going to add to the camera in a little bit, is some depth of field. Just getting these tree trunks in position. Adding some nice noise. I do think that the texture here on the wood needs to be a little larger. Turn down that stretch too. The graininess. Don't want that. Feel. Cool, cool, cool. Getting there. Thank you, Siddharth. All right, so I think another thing I want to do is add some kind of rocks here. But Stuart, that's a cube, it's not a rock. We'll get there. So, I'll make a copy of this just so we have them. And I'm going to expand it, throw it in a subdivision surface. What I like to do more frequently now is lean into some of these sculpt tools, which are awesome. These grab, I'm going to turn the size way up because usually it's not big enough at all. Still isn't. Get out of the camera here just so I can rotate around this guy. It's kind of fun to look at. Also going to turn settings down a little bit. I'm going to just really beat up this cube. Get some nice evenness on the surface. These Sculpt Tools are awesome. I wish I'd learned more about these earlier on in my Cinema 4D career. It's kind of rocky, yeah. Big, big. Let's make a copy. Just kind of set up a few styles of rock here. I like to hold shift, just kind of smooth some of this out. Get back into my camera. Scale these dudes down a little bit because I definitely don't want them that prominent at this point, but now I'm going to use these as an additional element around my scene. It's rocky bits. Probably get away with just one level of subdivision. Yeah, I think that'll work. We get a little larger on these letters. What I don't know is how I want to texture these. Not sure exactly what I'm going to be doing with those in terms of texture. Should angle them a little more though. It's going to give us some more interest, some more variation. Yep, that's right. You can sculpt the subsurface objects. I mean, really, you're sculpting the object underneath the subdivision surface, but, you know, same idea. It's smoothing on the fly as you're kind of doing your thing there. Very good. It's kind of, I like that side. Sometimes all you need to do is rotate your guy. Not loving that dude so much, so let's kind of... See, it actually won't let you sculpt the subdivision surface itself. Got to grab the layer beneath. Let's see what we're dealing with here. We've got some items way up in the foreground now, which is a little better. Yeah, we're getting there. I think we might be a little bit too strong on the atmospheric perspective at this point. So I'm going to turn that down a little bit. Let's turn the intensity down. Let's compare that to this. A little better. I think it was a little too strong before. Turn it up slightly. Here's another thing I wanted to try. So the sun, let's see, can I? No. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the intensity of the sun down to 0. Let's see what that gets us. That's just going to give us overall lighting. Which really is kind of cool. But this is a feature I want to show everyone. Now I'm going to add an infinite light, which is going to act a lot like a sun. By default, the infinite light is pointing off to the side, which isn't what I want. So I'm going to angle that. Actually, put it in a position where we can see it a little better. Infinite light acts a lot like a sun. It's just going to be a large unidirectional light in your scene. And it's just, the position of it doesn't matter. The angle of it is what matters. It's going to take on the angle that you see in this little line in the center here. So let's see what we get. It's going to be a strong, harsh shadow at the harsh lighting at this point. You see, we haven't added any shadow to it yet. So let's add a ray traced shadow because that's what the sun is like. We'll see how that looks. A little too strong at this point. What I wanted to do, add a little more of an angle here. What I wanted to do is have some like dappled lighting coming in through here as if the sunlight was filtering through the trees. And in plenty of episodes of the practice in the past, what I've done is actually use a cloner object and actually put a whole bunch of stuff in the sky above the scene to force that lighting. What I learned that you can do recently, which I love, is you can just take a material, add some noise to it, or a bitmap image or whatever you like. If you want to do like your bat signal in the sky, this would be a great way to do that. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a noisy texture to this light, and what should happen is I should get a noisy light automatically. Now, that didn't work. How do I do this? I wonder if I have to do this with my alpha. Maybe I have to do it with my alpha. Off reflectance, turn off color. Let's move this over to the alpha channel. I think this works in the alpha. Just learned it, so forgive me here if it doesn't work off the bat right away. There we go. Now you can see it's adding this texture to the light itself. Holy cow. It's kind of like volumetric lighting, I guess. I still think there are a few things. So I think this is at the wrong angle. I want to angle that off a little more. I'm going to add a bit of yellow to it, just to be some warm lighting, some warm evening lighting. I think intensity is a little too strong. Go in here and add a little more interest by adding some blue to the shadows so that it looks really good. And I think the noise was too small, so let's go way back up. And we also want to clip out some of this lighting. Actually, let's go in the other direction. Turn the contrast up because I don't really want a lot of softness. I want, leaves don't have feathered edges typically. Let's see how that goes. That's going to make the scene a lot lighter. What I used to do was literally add a bunch of objects in between the light and the scene. This is going to do that in a much simpler way. I think I need to make the scale larger. I need to change the clipping. We're going to adjust this, get it going. We're going to make our scene a lot lighter than it would have been. Now we're getting there. Now we're getting someplace. So I think maybe I'm going to come up with the gray a little bit with that dark end so that, oh, actually we need to go in the other direction. Make this white sort of a light gray. So that way we're not getting such a harsh shadow. Better. Getting there. Getting there. I think we still need to clip out some of the lighting. See how this goes. Also change the texture type to something a little more natural. A little better. A little better. Not quite enough. Keep working this till we get it right. I also think while we're at it, this wood texture still isn't large enough. Thank you. Yeah, pretty cool trick, huh? Good to see you again, Caesar. I think I need to do perhaps is layer this. It's looking a little too uniform. So I can just copy paste this. Nope, not copy and pasted the light. Copy, paste. All right, there we go. This one I'm going to bring the scale down. Change. Where's the seed? Where's the seed? No seed, huh? All disappeared, which is interesting because this doesn't seem to reflect this. Does layer not work on an alpha? Oh, you're killing me. Killing me. I'm just going to undo it. We don't have a layer anymore. It's frustrating. Yeah, so it seems that alphas work. Huh. Could be that I just need a different type of noise altogether. Yeah, I use Mixamo all the time, Swoop. Thanks, Yahav. Appreciate you tuning in. I've used Mixamo plenty of times, actually a handful of times on the practice. It's really fun, really easy way to rig up a character. What I wanted to do, I want to do sometime soon. I haven't gotten around to it, but one of the ideas I have for an episode of the practice is just to kind of make a wacky shape, a shape that's not really humanoid, and do kind of an abstract animation by rigging a humanoid shape to, or rigging humanoid bones to just some crazy abstract shape, mixing it with strange textures and sort of seeing what we can get. I will try to do that sometime soon. All right. All right. That is going to be okay for now. It's not perfect. And to be honest, I might wind up going in there and just using my old school method of literally putting items in between the sky itself and the model. This helps, but it's not very realistic. So anyway, let's keep pushing it. Let's keep going. Plenty more to do. We can continue working on that lighting as we go. Let's also change it to a soft shadow matte. Maybe that'll help a little bit. We're starting to lose that definition in the shading of the trees, which is too bad. So I do think we need hard. It's also thrown a little ambient occlusion. That couldn't hurt. I'm going to take a selection of these trees, just kind of randomly, painting over them. These ones I'm going to copy in behind the camera. We can get some of these long shadows creeping across the foreground. I'm going to do that. I'm just going to copy these guys where we can't really see them. You can see a couple. I'm also going to angle them in a way where they will be in between the lighting and the scene. These guys too. Ooh, I meant to group them. Should definitely do that. These are foreground trees. Just to keep the cost down a little bit. I should turn the segments down. So they're just casting shadows. We're not going to see them. Displacer. Also just going to delete the displacer from these. No sense in having those. That dude's in the way. What do we got? What do we got? No, it's free. Well, it's Mixamo is free with an Adobe Creative Cloud subscription. So if you have Adobe Creative Cloud, then it's free. It used to be outright free, but then I know Adobe acquired them. So I'm not positive. I believe it is, but don't quote me on that. Definitely used to be. Right. Another thing we should do is get some greenery in here. Get the branches going. I'm going to use another cube here. Oops. These are going to be sort of simplified, abstract tree limbs, tree branches. So I think that's going to do pretty well. Should add another. No. Let's go with one. Leaves. I'm leaving it. I'm leaving it. This is where we can start, creating additional foreground and background elements that are going to kind of frame out the composition, hide certain bits of trees, show certain bits of trees, and we can really use these to really start defining our composition. This is one of the fun bits. It's also going to give us a good deal of additional shadowing, which is going to be helpful. I can start creating depth. You see here, I'm choosing which bits overlap and are covering the tree trunks. So they're also going to serve to catch a bunch of shadows, add a bunch of detail. Let's just take a peek at what we've got here. Everything looks a little bit too polka dotty. I'm gonna change the clipping on this noise. Just get less of it overall. It is slowly updating, chugging along here. So bit more contrast there. I think that's going to work out a little better. See, now we've got this guy, he's pretty dark in the foreground, catching a lot of shadow. Maybe we can scale one down. Have this guy catch a little bit of a highlight. I do hope. The shadows are just a little too blue, so I'm going to take them down a bit. Nice. I didn't like the crease I was getting there. This guy right here, not loving that. So I turn the Fong up a bit. I'm not sure if that's going to fix it or not. Not, I know what to do. See here, I can sort of push things forward and backwards and kind of selectively show bits of tree, hide bits of tree. It's going to allow me to really control and finesse this composition. The thing I think we need is some stuff really in the foreground here. Yep, that helped. Better. Getting there. Getting there. I do like how this O here has got a kind of a strong shadow cutting across it. That's something I think I'm going to want to play up in some of these letters. I should also texture these rocks a bit. Let's go with something simple. See what that gets us. That might be too light. it's too late. Let's go dark on these guys. Actually, let's give them a bump. I'm going to do diffusion like the others, but let's give them a bump. Scale it way down. Flip a lot of it out. That's nice. Hey there, Giles. Thanks for tuning in. The rare Twitch commenter. I want to start closing off some of this background. Oh yeah, big time. Mostly YouTube. Handful of Periscope folks, but they rarely comment. What's crazy is this is episode 150, and I am very close to breaking the 10,000 subscriber mark on YouTube. So do me a favor and subscribe. It would be pretty cool to break that milestone. I know, look, I'm no Casey Neistat. I'm not going to start making my living just off YouTube revenue alone anytime soon. But that 10,000 mark is going to feel pretty good. I bet in the next couple weeks I'll break it, regardless. But maybe we can make that final push today and make it happen. That would be cool. Would be cool. That's true. What's up, Steven? You got to start that snowball. It's crazy. I've been at it for almost 3 years now doing this show. I think these darker rocks work a little better. A little better. Let's get some of these bad boys further in the background. The sculpting tools, they are great. You guys all Cinema 4D users? What brings you to this channel? Just skulking around YouTube, checking stuff out? You guys like art? You guys like live streams? What's your story? That is weird. Sorry there, don't mean to call you out by your first name if that's an issue. Yeah, Twitch, much better, but the environment seems to be geared more and more towards games. Yeah, I mean, I think that's really what Twitch does best. That's how they started, is it's really like a gaming platform, yeah? In fact, maybe I'm outing myself as a bit of an old man, but when I first heard the concept for Twitch a handful of years ago, I thought, who in their right mind just watch other people play video games? But, you know, there's more and more of a pro esports video game atmosphere out there, which is kind of cool. I guess, you know, it sort of, in a way, reminds me of, you know, going over to a friend's house and, you know, their older brother wouldn't let us play the game. He wouldn't give us a turn. So we wound up just sitting there watching him play, you know, NHL 97 or whatever. So now I'm pushing some stuff further into the background here, really picking up on that atmospheric perspective. I'm about to throw global illumination on. Also think I might add a little bit of contrast to this alpha channel here. If I wanted to get really fancy with this, I could probably make a texture with a bunch of leaf shapes in it, clone those a bunch of times, get a little bit more of a realistic effect here. Got the bell notification. Cool. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Turning up the bump a little bit on these rocks. And see how these mountains back here are turning blue? And that's what I wanted. That is that atmospheric perspective that I love so dearly. So I just did here. Let's see if that works. Should work. So I use an expression called a set driver. What that basically means is that this bump channel should take all of its information from here. So instead of taking this, dragging it over and adding it, what I'm doing is just having this texture drive this bump. So if I wind up changing the scale or the orientation or any details inside here, the bump channel should follow as well. Let's see what we got here. That said, I think I want to make this a little lighter. It's too strong on these rings. There we go. Have I ever run into a problem where the mesh starts to look like you duplicated it onto itself? I'm not sure I know what you mean exactly. I have accidentally duplicated the mesh onto itself. It could be an issue with normals in the direction your normals are facing. It's a common thing. Could actually be an issue of you know, maybe doing a, what do you call it? Doing an extrusion and having caps turned on where they shouldn't be, so that you've actually got hidden geometry. It might be helpful to sort of like go inside of your model a little bit and see if you've accidentally duplicated any of the mesh inside of there. It does happen. There we go. That's starting to look a little better. I think I do want to turn this down a bit. There it goes. See, it's starting to show up as this set driven. Turn that bump down a hair. Good. Still think I want to turn the scale up a bit more. Maybe the grain down a little bit. Cool. This might be a bit overkill. Maybe what I need to do is just make this a lot more subtle. I think it's just too harsh. It's looking kind of spotted, which is not really the look I was going for. That's better. That's a little better. That's when I get far along in creating a character after dropping subdivision surfaces on my mesh. It's really patchy in certain areas. What might be happening there also is if you rig a character and bind it and then change the geometry, it could break because your rig, your skeleton underneath is going to try to attach to certain bits of geometry. But if you change that geometry after it's been rigged, it's going to have errors. It doesn't know where to grab. Basically, you want to be done with your character model before you start rigging it. I think I want to add a little bit of variation here to the color of the ground. Some of these dudes could be a little darker here and there. It's going to help. This guy's a little too blue. I'm going to bring him forward, I think. And with maybe this guy. Whoops. Come on. Go. Now, I think what I'm going to do is go ahead and throw on global illumination now. Get a little closer to that final look I'm going to go for. And that's actually going to give us a lot more light bounce. It's going to give us more realistic lighting. It's also going to lighten up the scene a lot for us. try out this fancy dancy GI. It'll take longer to render, I'll tell you that. Yo-ho! What is up, Steve? You know, I hadn't thought of adding any critters at this point. Oh yeah, look how much that global illumination setting helps us out with the realism here. We get a lot more of the texture on the trees. And we can see our typography a little bit better here, which was sort of going to be the focus. And to answer your question, I was going to focus on this typography here in the scene instead of adding any aminals. But it's not a bad idea. Do love me a good critter. Get some taller rocks going. Yeah, I'm liking this a lot more. What I think I need to do now, actually turn up the strength of the shadows on my light. So let's see here. Turn up this density, 20%. Physical light, let's see, sky. Yeah, much nicer, much nicer. Look at that difference. Much nicer. Yep, global illumination did all of that. That is right. Sometimes it's nice to wait a while to turn up your settings. The thinking there is that you don't want to rely on render settings too much, right? Obviously you want them to look nice. Obviously you want them to work. But you want to sort out the more basic core principles of your scene before you get into that, right? Like, I wanted to make sure the composition was working, the concept, the layout, you know, get things in a reasonable state before we start polishing them. Maybe a good analogy is that, I don't know, if you were going to build a car, you would get the engine and the transmission working before you painted it bright pink or whatever, right? You wanna start from the ground up. You don't pick the doorknobs in your house before you've framed the walls. So frame those walls, my friends. This might be my 150th episode. I'm getting better at streaming, but maybe I'm not getting any better at analogies. It's kind of weird. I'm going through and adding a little more detail, some more of these sort of tree limbs or boughs, groupings of leaves. Bubble leaves. No, global illumination is different from ray tracing. I think ray tracing, don't quote me on this. My understanding is that ray tracing is a simple one bounce light setup. So basically the light will shoot sort of virtual photons at your scene and they will bounce around once and head to the camera, and that's going to be the look of your scene. What global illumination does is it allows the photons to realistically bounce off of the objects in your scene. And they travel further and they behave more like real lighting does in the real world. And they give you a much nicer look. They illuminate your globe, is what they do. Yes, yes. I'm going to add a little bit of fog soon. I like me some fog. Yeah, getting better, getting there. Except I don't know about this guy. That's a little better. So better than global illumination. I'm not sure if I could say that there's something better than global illumination. Depends on what you need. Global illumination is something that's just going to make your scene a little more realistic, or a lot more realistic. It's going to give you more bounce for the ounce. But it depends on what you need. There isn't any right or wrong. There isn't any better or worse necessarily. It's all about just what you need for a specific project or specific scene. There's no magic make it look good button. You've got to kind of know what you're doing. You got to apply your design principles to it. You've got to select colors. You've got to lay things out. You got to think about contrast and variation. You got to think about texture and harmony and all those fun things. So let's get into this physical sky object. Let's turn on fog. Fog is cool. So what I'm going to do is, you see, fog will give you this curve here for the distribution of the density. First, let's add a little color. Make it sort of a bluish gray fog. All right, so what I want to do is this here is your 0 point, and this is where the fog will be most dense. What I'm going to do is I'm going to look at my ground, and I'm going to check out the position of the ground. So The ground, let me just double check which is, okay, so on the y-axis, which is up and down, we're at -30 for the ground. So what I want to do is with my fog is I'm going to turn it down so that the strongest point is at about, well, see, this here is 30, so what I need to do is zoom out. I need my strongest point, my start height, to be at about -30. So turn it up a bit. There's -40, there's about -30. Whoops. I just undid all of that by pressing 1. All right, so it's -20. Let's keep scooting it down. It's about -30. I'm going to turn the density up a little bit. Also going to turn the max distance down. So let's see, this faraway hills are about 2,000, 20,000 away, 20,000 units, and this is set to 80,000. No, so I can just like delete a 0 there. So let's see what that gives us. Usually with fog, you have to kind of play around with it a bit. I'm guessing by the way this color is changing in the rendering here that we're going to get a little bit of something. That's going to add, you know, it's going to add to that atmospheric perspective. It's going to give us some nice softness along the bottom edge of the model here, along the ground. Check it out. So like I said to people tuning in, I said it a little while ago, but to people who are just tuning in, we're really, really close to that 10,000 subscriber mark on YouTube. So if you'd be so kind, go over there, give me a follow. Would appreciate that. Definitely getting some fogginess in here, which I dig. Also getting a little weird error in the rendering. Sometimes we can get around that just by trying it again. Hopefully it doesn't keep doing that. Just going to change the curve here a little bit. Bring that up a little bit. To make this a little bit more blue. I'm also going to scoot this forward because I think the fog is going a little too high. If you can imagine this curve, this is the most dense part. Got it around -30, which is where my floor starts. So that's where I want it to be most dense. And then this is the fall. It's going to get less dense as this goes down. I want a lot of density here, and then I want the density to sort of fall off. So what I'm doing is scooting this down in value so that the density, so that the fog basically won't go as high. Now we've that rendering error has gone away, which I like. But you can see comparing the two, I'm just going to delete that middle one so we can compare the two. See that softness we're getting? Really nice. Really nice. Got the sub and belt. Yeah, I hear you on that. Anonymity for the win. Oh, you know what? I didn't even put together both of those. I thought it was just some other dude with that name. My bad. It's funny how I recognized the not the acronym. What is it, like the pen name? Not the pen name. What do you call that? I recognized the nickname, but didn't attribute your real name to you. How strange. Lots of detail here. Being that this is the 150th episode and that I'm having fun with this, I think I'm going to go over time. Usually I try to stick to around 2 hours, but screw it. Avi. I think the density is about right on this fog, but I want it to be bluer. So let's make it a little lighter, a little more saturated. I do have to say, even though I'm going to stick around for longer than 2 hours today, I might have to go pee soon. Take a bio break. Definitely going to need more rocks here. I might even get crazy and add some grassy patches. Rock here and a rock there. Dwayne Johnson here, Dwayne Johnson there. I'm an idiot. Yeah, cool. Cool. I think this S over here is a little bit hidden, a little bit too obscure. Scoot this guy down in size. Maybe just should delete this one. I'm going to push him way back into the background. Become a little bit forward with this dude. I want him to be a little more visible. I was thinking about how to texture letters, but I might just leave them white. They kind of contrast nicely. I think in terms of visibility, I should go a little larger on them as well. Let's do that. Let us do that. Now that we got the GI going, I can turn up the intensity of this fake leaf texture. Yeah. Even the intensity of that sky object as well. Now, one of the next things I think I'm going to do, and really kind of the namesake of this piece, the whole focus idea is adding some depth of field. So that way things really get blurry as they go back. And some of these letters are going to be a little blurrier than others. And the ones in the foreground I think will be the least blurry. You know that old trick. All right, let's see how those larger letters work. People's practice. Okay, what that looked like with the tune shader, I don't know. Different. It would definitely be flatter. I think throwing the tune shader on here all of a sudden would definitely undo a lot of the work we've done to set up some of the details and things like that in the scene. Like the fog would go away, the atmospheric perspective would go away, the nice soft lighting would go away. So while it's an interesting question, I don't think I'm going to do that, just because the whole idea with this piece is this nice, soft, fuzzy, focusy depth of field. So, and to be honest, Sketch and Tune, that whole rendering system, is something that I don't know a ton about. I know it's very powerful. There's a lot of artists who use it to very great effect. Something I should learn a little bit more about. Something I know a ton about. Your boy EJ Hassenfratz over at iDesign is really, really good at that stuff. Some really cool tuning stuff. If you want to learn more about Sketch and Tune, I definitely recommend checking out his channel. They're subtly larger, but I think that works. I do like those foreground rocks. Do want to add one of these sort of darker patches to the foreground here. Not much, just a little bit, just subtle, subtle, subtle. Maybe another one over here. Slowly building up those details. Now let's see a bit of depth of field. Let's turn on depth of field here. Let's go to the camera. Turn on rear blur. I'm going to go into the overhead view so we can see from the camera. Oh, I'm going to turn the camera on. What we want to do is really scoot this forward. This line here is going to represent what's in focus, and this background, this back line here is going to represent the stuff that's way out of focus. So you can see we've got some of those landscapes going way back. In fact, I think I want to bring some of those forward a little too far back. Good. Further forward. Good. Those are going to be way out of focus. Now let's the letters are here. We want the letters to be both in and out of focus. Some of them in focus, some of them out of focus. And we do have a bit of depth to play with here. So let's grab that camera, scoot that forward. Let's do a quick test and see what we get. I'm going to take a bio break. See you in a second. right, so that is very blurry. Too much so. So a couple things to do to remedy that. First, I'm going to go into depth of field. I'm going to blur its strength down a little bit, and the distance blur strength down a little bit. And I think I'm also going to pull that outer edge out a little further. No, much too strong. Go down another click here. Well, actually, I've never really played with this lens sharpness much. So let's turn it up to say 10%. See what that does. I'm only going to change one variable at a time because it'd be tough to say what was working and what wasn't without doing that. It is really cool to get this blurry depth of field though, and really look at how some of these objects really sort of fade away and get soft and blurry way back there. It's too much. I want it to be kind of a subtle effect. I also think I want to turn atmosphere up a little bit. Let's go to 145. Better. A lot better. And go down just a hair. Well, let's see what this lens sharpness does first. I actually think we could a little more density of the fog. Let's go up to 60. Edit this curve a little bit. Inching closer, slowly but surely. I'm going to try something that I think is really going to add a lot of time to the rendering, but what I want is for the light to sort of penetrate these tree limbs, these green tree leaf bunches. First I'm going to adjust the contrast on these guys a little bit more. So back to the tree limbs, what I'm going to do is add some subsurface scattering in the luminance channel. Just a little bit, just so the light kind of penetrates through. Say 20%. I haven't really seen any difference with this lens sharpness. Compare that to the one before. No. Honestly, I can't tell the difference. Let's go with it. Another thing I saw in this physical sky that I've never played with before is sunbeams. Let's just turn that on. Let's see what we get. It would be cool if we could get some sort of angular beams peeking in through. Oh, but you know what? I have the sun turned off here. So, yeah, we'll play with that another day. What I can do, though, to simulate that effect, I think, is in the visibility. Oh, you can't use that. Never mind. Never mind. I was going to turn on the visibility, but apparently with an infinite light, you can't turn on volumetric or visibility, which is sad. Well, that's okay. Yeah, you can see the fog's definitely been turned up a bit here. It's a little bluer in the background. Subsurface scattering actually hasn't added too much time to the rendering, which I'm pleased to see. You can see, however, that the light seems to penetrate through a little bit more. Maybe I can turn that up a hair. Nice. Add a little bit more noise back in. It's really starting to come together. We can go up again, size of these letters. You think they're starting to disappear a little bit. Do want them to be legible. I like how the background really is getting obscured back here. It's nice. It's getting nice and soft as we move back. Looking pretty cool. Oh, what's the frowny face about? Didn't like my answer about the toon shader. Sorry, pal. Well, what I basically said is that we've done so much with the lighting and the softness of the fog and the texturing and going for this really like kind of gentle, fuzzy look that Sketch and Tune would undo all of that. It would turn it into very flat colors and very hard edges. So I don't think that's an approach I'm going to take with this. But I also recommend if you want to learn more about Sketch and Tune, which is something I don't know a ton about, to be honest, you should definitely check out iDesign, EJ Hasenfrat's channel. He dives into a lot of that and does some really beautiful stuff with it. Good question, Cesar. Not yet. The shelves should arrive in about a week. So soon. I'm very excited about this new studio space. Oh no, I'm getting some of those weird rendering errors again. But they should go away in the next round. It's funny how those just show up sometimes. All right, we're getting really close, I think, to the final here. And what else to add? Ooh, let's think about adding a little bit of grass. Maybe we can do a few grassy patches. What I'm going to add a landscape. Get out of the camera. Just focus on this landscape. Now, we hardly need any detail here. Just going to go 5 by 5. The reason I'm using a landscape is just because it naturally has this sort of bump, which is what I want. So a little bit of a fall off here. I'm gonna make this editable. Let's see. And I'm gonna create a grass material. This is like your cheat code. What I can do is just add this grass to the landscape. Does that work? Yeah. Creates a little grassy object. Let's scoot that. Well, first, it's going to include that. But what I want to do is let's just isolate that first and kind of work with it on its own so we can get faster render times. Just kind of see what we're dealing with here. Well, I turned out the lighting, so that's not going to work for us. Let's do this. And there is our grass. Look at that. Really not bad to start with. I'm going to select this grass. Man, why does that hide itself? I'm going to alter the settings a little bit. Ooh, I don't like the way that it's blurring though. That's very strange. Turn down the density. I don't think we need quite that much. Turn the height up a little bit. Also not loving the color. I want to go the more saturated color. A little bit brighter. The wetness down, turn some of that specularity down. Let's isolate that again and try, see what we get. Thanks, Cesar. Yeah, I'm gonna try and share that when I get there. That is weird how it treats this blur. Hopefully when I have the rest of the objects in the scene, it doesn't treat them that way. Let's check it out. Turn that down. Make this a little smaller. I'm gonna add texture to it. Let's just see what we're dealing with here. Hope that it doesn't blur it weirdly when it's in situation, the rest of these guys. Turn the density down a little bit further. I will definitely add some images of the new shelving set up the whole studio space when we get a little closer. All right, well, there's our grass. It's a little too long, I think. A little too dense. Big question is, how is it going to be treated with that blur? I think when we have other objects around it, it's going to treat it appropriately. Sure hope. I do like the way the lighting is reacting with it. Get these little bits of lighting peeking through with the blades. Come on now. Didn't add much to the rendering time, which is pretty nice. Yeah, worked all right. Okay. I want to add a few other bits of it here and there. Trying to stay organized here. The grass really is like a hair object preset that you can use. I'll quickly add a grassy hair object. Something I only recently learned about, but it's been pretty useful. No, that's rendering. I suppose it's fun to go all the way back to the beginning and see what we're dealing with. Look at where we started. Not pretty. Let's just go through all the test renderings. Still ugly. A little better. A little better. Still not great. Ooh, look at the atmosphere. A little more depth. Angling the letters helps. That's kind of nice too. Looking like a bamboo forest a little bit. Some shadowing. And some textured lighting. Look at that. It's like cow spots. Pushing it, pushing it. Spent a lot of time playing with that textured lighting here. Turns out that global illumination really made a big difference in how that was treated. Adding some rocks and some leafy bunches. Getting there, getting there. Composition's starting to come together. And boom, that GI really makes a big difference. We start getting some true color in there. Some more vibrance, some more saturation, which is what we wanted. Started playing with that blur, getting that depth of field and that fog going. Some weird tests. Yeah, and actually, this is sort of what I was after with the grass. Very subtle, just a couple little patches here and there. I don't want to do too much. We can add a few more. Just a little bit off to the side here. It's a little bit jagged yet. I think when we turn on anti-aliasing for the final pass, it should improve a bit. It does get a little blurry back there, which is what we like and what we want. Push this guy a little further back. Let's do two of them. Let's do one further back here. One, say, around here. Just a touch. Just a subtle bit. Yeah. It's still a little too bright though, so let's go down on the brightness a bit. Getting close. I think we're gonna knock out a final rendering soon. Just going through and turning some of my settings up here. Big one here is going to be Anti-aliasing. Go down to 2 by 2 on that, I believe. Let's also make it bigger. I'm going to lock this ratio. Say HD enough. Yeah, let's do that. 1920 by 1080 should do the trick for now. Yeah, we're really getting there. All right, what do you guys think? And for that final rendering, we add a little bit more grass to the background. Some over here. It's gonna be mostly blurred out, but it might be a nice bit of detail. Oh. Of course, we could go through and just keep tweaking all the placement of these guys, and just adding more and more detail. It's kind of tempting to do so. We could really finesse this till the cows come home. I might turn the depth of field up just slightly, like 1/4%. Now, I think when we render again with the anti-aliasing turned up, some of these jagged shadows should be a little smoother. And you know what I'm going to do? Just because I like this piece so much, I'm going to go to the full 4x4. Make it look good. All right. Off we go to that final rendering. While that's going, I'm going to open up Photoshop so we can do a bit of color correction and final retouching. Waiting for it to render. Hey there, Monka. How's it going? Monetka? How much time you work with Cinema 4D? So, every day for a couple hours at least, and it's probably been about 10 years actually that I've been working with Cinema 4D. We're on release 20 now, and I think the first version I ever had was release 12 or so. Yeah, so it's been nearly a decade, slowly chipping away at it. Gotta say it was very different than Creative Suite. Working in 3D is a whole different methodology. You gotta think about things differently. It's kind of a way of thinking about things that differs from working in 2D. Although I will say that if you do have a foundation working with Illustrator or Photoshop or any of the Creative Suite tools, it's definitely going to help you pick it up. I'll also say that I started by trying to learn Blender because I was kind of scared by shocked by the price tag of cinema. 3D suites are really expensive, and I tried to pick up Blender at first. And I understand Blender is a very powerful tool, but to be honest, I had a really tough time sort of learning it and figuring out the interface and all that stuff. And I really believe that cinema is a fairly intuitive and fairly easy to pick up piece of 3D software. So I would definitely recommend that for beginners. The other great thing about cinema is it's sort of a great generalist's 3D package. Some 3D programs tend to be better for different things. Certain ones are sort of better for architects or interior designers or product designers. I think Cinema 4D is really great for graphic designers and motion graphic artists, but you can really do a lot with cinema. It's really great for generalists. It's a very powerful all-purpose 3D tool. So there's my little Cinema 4D plug for you. How about you, Monetka? Am I saying that properly? Do you work with cinema? How long have you been using it? Yeah, these shadows look a lot smoother now that we turn that aliasing up, the anti-aliasing. Right, almost done with this rendering. A lot of detail. I started this off by saying, we're going to do something that might be a little bit low poly. I'd say that this is not low poly, after all. In fact, I think there's a way we can say file. Project info. There's a way to. I sure thought there was a way to see how many polygons are in the whole. Yeah, forget. I forget. Certainly not low polygon, that's for sure. Yeah, oh well. Info. Project settings. Yeah, I forget. Information. There it is. So there are 438 objects and 2,381 polygons. Maybe that's not that high. I wonder if that counts the subdivision surfaces. Maybe 64,000 is the true amount of polygons when you count the subdivision surfaces. And of course, you got all these hair objects, which, you know, it's a lot. A lot. All right, so now I'm just going to do that depth of field pass, get that bit of blurriness going. Yeah. All right, let's save this out. Do a quick bit of color correction and retouching in Photoshop, and we're going to call it an episode. Add a little bit of contrast right away in the levels. Once these curves here, bump up the gamma and the midtones, add a little blue to the dark tones. Not too much. Subtle, subtle. Maybe even in the red, we could bump up the red in the highlights. Pull a bit of red out of the shadows. Let's see, it's subtle. Makes a difference. Let's also add a little bit of saturation. Saturation. Blah, too much. It kind of looks cool with less saturation. What do you think? I do kind of like it. Low saturation. It's kind of nice. Let's actually do that. Another thing we can do, duplicate this. To add a little bit of noise. Just 5% maybe. That's even a little much, so I can just turn it down, which is why I almost always do that on a separate layer. It's great. What I'm going to do is add a little bit of like a soft glow. some of these highlight areas. Copy and paste that. Blur it. It's going to give us kind of that bloom highlight kind of look. I might even push up brightness on that. Right down just a little bit. I'm also going to do is maybe add a little bit of sharpness. I'm going to selectively delete that just so we have a little bit of additional sharpness just in a few areas. Which really is going to be these foreground trees right here. Right. Well, everyone, I think I'm going to leave it there. Episode 150 really feels like a milestone. Appreciate everyone tuning in. It's been a lot of fun to make this. Appreciate, people who have sort of gotten me to this point. I know it's not a huge number, but I do have some supporters out there, and I do really appreciate you guys tuning in and checking out my work. So, here's to 150 more. Really, really close to that 10,000 subscriber mark. So, would really appreciate it if you hit subscribe, hit the bell icon so you get a notification when I go live. And if you want to keep up with me and the work that I'm producing, check me out on DLGNCE. On Instagram mostly, a little bit on Twitter, though I'm a little less active there than I am on Instagram. My website is diligence.studio, so you can check out my portfolio and keep up with things there. New videos every Tuesday, so I'll see you next week. And this is Stuart saying goodbye. Thanks for tuning in. Later.